We're back, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm here with my professor and pastor, Sasha, and my good friend, John. And today we're going to be studying lesson chapter 10, Last Day Events. And Pastor, I just have to start out with this. To a Jew in the times of Jesus, when Jesus says that not one stone shall be left upon another, why was this so hard for the people of God at the time to grasp? Why was this so hard for a Jewish mind to understand?
To compare this, I think the best way for me to compare is to compare the tragedy of September 11.
Oh, okay.
This is the, I don't know how you guys felt. You were pretty young back then, right?
Fourth grade.
Fourth grade, but was it talked in a school?
For the whole year, for the rest of the year. And it was really hard because we saw the adults in our life just be so utterly terrified of what that meant for the American people.
Yeah.
Oh, you were not. That's right. You were not in America at the time.
I was.
You were?
I was in Florida. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was literally in fourth grade, Miami, Florida, and it was just really shocking to see all the adults' reaction to something I didn't really understand. But I'll tell you this: every September 11th, I watch videos on YouTube of the Twin Towers, and it makes me really sad. I even cry. So You're saying it was similar to that?
Very similar.
Wow.
Very similar. Think about this New York World Trade Center. This is kind of the heart of America. In a sense, coming from the different country. America was never attacked on its soil.
Never.
Since Pearl Harbor.
Well, even when you take Pearl Harbor, which is pretty bad, but it wasn't exactly the American soil.
Mainland.
It was Hawaii, kind of outlying island. But, just come straight to New York and kill 3,000 people. It's shocking.
So this is how they felt. They were shocked that Jesus would say something that hits home.
Yes, but they should have read Book of Daniel more carefully. And Jesus refers to it. Because on the one hand, it's not easy, I would say. Sometimes for a Christian, it is easy to look and say, especially Adventists, like first coming of Jesus, second coming of Jesus. It's the second nature of Adventists, right?
Yeah, we have all the information before us.
Yes. Well, I just want you to think from the perspective of a Jew who is reading the Tanakh, Moses, prophets, Old Testament. Can you point where in the Tanakh do we have first and second coming of Jesus?
Isaiah.
Where?
52 and 53.
That's the death of the Messiah. But where do we see actually the separation of here's the first coming, here's the second? It is in Isaiah, but it requires lots of studies. The first coming is, I'll give a short answer. Sure. The first coming is Isaiah 9:6. The child is born to us. And the second coming, the root of Jesse comes, and the lion will lie with the lamb.
Is that Isaiah 11 or?
11, yes. It's Isaiah 11.
And these are only 2 chapters apart.
Exactly. And so this is only one place in the Tanakh and requires studying the whole context, Isaiah from 7 to 12, to see, okay, this is where the first coming, the birth of the Savior, and this is the second coming. The Savior comes, endowed with the Spirit of the Lord and changes the world for good. So that requires lots of studies. Again, for those who are Adventists, they read New Testament. It's kind of like second nature, but for the Jews, it's not.
Yeah, they were living it. They were going.
The only place which talks about the destruction of the second temple is in Daniel. Because there's no any other place, Tanakh is full of the prophecies about the destruction of the temple, specifically book of Jeremiah and book of Ezekiel and book of Hosea, you name it. But it was all fulfilled during Nebuchadnezzar's invasion.
Yeah, Jeremiah.
Yeah, but when you look at Daniel 9, this is the only time we see. Can you read for us Daniel 9:26?
Then after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing, and the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and its end will come with a flood. Even to the end there will be war, desolations are determined.
Yeah, so it's very clear, isn't it?
Yeah.
Messiah dies. This is the text which made me accept Jesus as the true Messiah of Israel. Because here, it's clearly Messiah dies and then the temple destroyed. 40 years apart, but the sequence, this is what matters.
So this is interesting. Just going back to Daniel chapter 9, verse 26, why does it say the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary? It's implying that the people would destroy the sanctuary and city. Why does it say that?
Well, that refers, of course, to Romans, and there's this kind of a contrast here between, the Messiah, the true prince, and then the false prince.
Interesting. So that being said, you're saying that to the people in the times of Jesus, when Jesus starts mentioning the destruction of the temple, they just didn't have the background of understanding that we have had years to establish, because they had Daniel 9, they had Isaiah 9:6 and Isaiah 11, but this was happening to them in real time. So for them, it was like an atomic bomb was falling on them.
Think about this. We all know, right now, this country is the most free country in the world.
Amen.
Right?
Yeah.
I would agree.
At least I do have comparisons, even with, Western Europe is also free world, but not like America. I'm not going to take Russia as an example.
Sure. Sure. Even when I compare us to our northern neighbor, Canada, there are some stark differences that I think would surprise the general populace if they were fully aware. Anyway.
Yeah, but we know what's going to happen in the future to this country.
Yeah.
We do.
So
this freedom is going to cease. Are you guys ready?
Well, I keep on telling people that I'm a little excited, but I might not know what I'm saying.
That's right.
It's going to be bittersweet because we will see the progression that is foretold, this fulfillment, but at the same time, it's like my country. I just imagine like on that day, I'm going to fold up my flag.
Is that the same?
I'm going to let it burn, and just like...
Yeah, we don't know.
But it's not my eternal home.
Yeah.
And that's what's important to keep in mind.
We don't know. I can imagine growing in the U.S., even when, I don't know if I should call myself, patriotic to America. I do know that this country accepted me and this country gave me freedom. And I have something to compare, but you guys born and raised there, when we came a couple days ago in Plymouth, there was this traditional event, the symphony orchestra, and then they, then they played these marches, traditional, and then American anthem, and then the fireworks. It feels good.
It feels good. And I'm glad that we're talking about this. The reason is because right now we're living in a very interesting time in America and in the world. And we're talking about Mark chapter 13. And there was a sense of pride for your nation. The people in the New Testament during Jesus' time, they loved Israel. They loved the temple. These were symbols of the nationhood. Today, we in America, we love our flag, or at least some of us do. And my parents came here in 1993 for a reason. And so I've grown very attached to this nation that I grew up in. But when I hear, and I've been actually preaching this sometimes, I've been saying, we're living in the last world empire. We're living in the, and I see sometimes people, and it shocks them. So when Jesus is saying them, it's beyond shocking, because to them, this was the Jerusalem that's to last, So what does Jesus mean when he says the abomination of desolation, Pastor?
Yeah, that's very important text here, which is let's just read the text here because that's what we're talking about. But first, before we read this text, let's just start from the beginning. So let's read Mark 13, verses 1 through 4.
As he was going out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Teacher, behold what beautiful stones and what wonderful buildings." And Jesus said to him, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left upon another which will not be torn down." As he was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter and James and John and Andrew were questioning him privately. "Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign when all these things are going to be fulfilled?"
Okay, that's nice translation. These things. Which things are they asking about?
Well, they say, "Which will these things be?" referencing the destruction of the temple. And they also add, "And what will be the sign?" Maybe I'm thinking of somewhere else.
Matthew 24. In Matthew 24, they conflate, they're correlating the temple being destroyed with the end of the world.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
The difference in Matthew, you're right. Let's go to Matthew 24 and compare. Since we're on this discussion, but before we go there, these things in Mark 13 refer to what? To what Jesus said, destruction of the temple. And you cut yourself, John, because in the question in Matthew 24 is a little, there are actually three questions.
Yes, I'll read verse 3 of 24. As he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately saying, "Tell us, when will these things happen? What will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?"
So again, these things are
Destruction of the temple.
Destruction of the temple, the second coming.
Then they ask, in addition to, what about the signs of your coming? And what about the end of the age?
3 things.
They're asking, they're not conflating it. They're asking 2 additional questions. That's why Matthew 24, I call it also the Sermon on the Mount. But it's the Mount of Olives. Yeah, I mean, it is on the Mount, right?
That's true.
So basically, here it's if we were to study Matthew 24, we would see 3 parts. And in Matthew 24, first answer is, what's the signs of the end? And of course, in 14, the gospel will be preached all over the world. And then the next thing is going to be the description of these things, which is destruction of Jerusalem. But in Mark, going back to Mark 13, Mark narrows down. He doesn't record for us the 2 other questions and 2 other answers. He records for us only the question about the destruction of Jerusalem. And so all these things, take a look. Verses 5 through 8. Take a look.
And Jesus began to say to them, "See to it that no one misleads you. Many will come in my name, saying, 'I am he,' and will mislead many. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be frightened. Those things must take place, but that is not yet the end. For nation will rise up against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will also be famines. These things are merely the beginning of birth pangs."
Yeah. So sometimes I see this text taken out of context. Oh, the war happened and they cite this. This isn't correct. Jesus was talking about the 40-year period before the destruction of Jerusalem, including, let's take a look here, verse 9. To prove it, take a look.
"But be on your guard, for they will deliver you to the courts, and you will be flogged in the synagogues." In the synagogues.
Yeah.
"And you will stand before governors and kings for my sake as a testimony to them." So he's not necessarily speaking to future generations. He's speaking specifically to these four that are asking him.
Yeah, these particular statement, let me rephrase. This statement is very clear that, there are similar statements about his actual second coming, and we'll see it in Luke and in Matthew. But this particular question, especially with synagogue and being rejected in synagogue, at least I know for sure, like when we talk about, what this country is going to be like when the freedom will be
removed.
And the Constitution is revoked or abandoned or what have you.
What will country look like? The only thing I can compare is Russia and Soviet Union and Stalin and Gulag, and what is happening today, very similar to what was happening in Stalin's day. Anybody who is not agreeing with the current government is tried and put to jail. I know that, but this is, and again, I don't know what it will look like in America, but for sure not. I don't think synagogue is going to be involved in this, for sure. That's why the context here is definitely pre-destruction of the temple. And that is very important. When we look at verse 14, take a look here, verse 14 and 15.
"But when you see the abomination of desolation standing where it should not be," let the reader understand, "then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains. The one who is on the housetop must not go down or go in to get anything out of his house."
Okay.
Yeah.
First, let's answer the question, where does the prophet Daniel speak about abomination of desolation?
Daniel chapter 8?
9.
9?
9.
Oh, 9, yes.
We just read 9:26. Let's read it together with 26 and 27.
"Then after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing. And the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And its end will come with a flood. Even to the end there will be war. Desolations are determined." Desolations. "And he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. And on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, even until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, is poured out on the one who makes desolate."
Aha.
Wow.
Abomination of desolation.
Yes.
On the wing of the
Temple.
Right? We found the place, but let's parse it a little bit. I'm not gonna have time to debate, with some theologians who are putting this verse 26 and 27 into historical sequence, and they take 26 as the death of the Messiah, and 27 they make a narrative that the temple will be destroyed, rebuilt, and on and on and on, which is not there in the text. But if we look at these two texts, in the Bible, we have such a literary device which is called parallelism, which means the same idea is presented in different words. Mm-hmm. Take a look at this. How do we see the same idea? How is the 26? What's at the end of verse 26?
Even to the end, there will be war. Desolations are determined.
Mm-hmm. End of the verse 27.
Even until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, is poured out, as a flood might be, poured out on the one who makes desolate.
Desolation. Mm-hmm. Take at the beginning, the first words of 26.
Then after the 62 weeks, the Messiah, the 62, subject of the sentence.
62 weeks.
Right.
And before we see the period is broken between 7 weeks and 62 weeks, which is 69 week, right?
Yeah.
Now, the beginning of the word 20, of the verse 27.
He will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week.
Okay.
And in the middle of the week.
Yeah. So you see, there is one last week. It's described in verse 26 as after 62 week. It's going to be the last one. Yep. And then so it's the same. So if we go this way, we get Messiah shall be cut off, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
And in verse 27, which words parallel to Messiah cut off?
He will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering.
Yeah. Aha, you see this?
Yeah.
So why is it the same?
Because in being that sacrifice, which fulfills all other sacrifice, he is cut off from God.
Exactly. So Messiah is cut off, sacrificed, and it's the same as, that's the final ultimate sacrifice. No more need for temple sacrifice.
No more need for temple.
By the way, Jesus dies. What happens during Jesus' death with the temple?
The veil rips.
Yeah, the veil rips, which shows no need for any services. I mean, they continue because priests don't accept it.
Right.
But in God's eyes, they're absolutely in vain. There's no need for that.
He is cut off. The veil is torn so that we are no longer cut off.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful.
Exactly, that's right. And so Messiah is cut off. Go back to verse 26. And then what is the next sentence in verse 26?
The people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary.
Okay, and then go back to verse 27 after the word sacrifice. What's the next?
And on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate.
See? So, destruction of the temple, abomination, desolation. It is the same thing. Go back with me to Mark chapter 13 and see what happens. Let's reread this passage about the abomination and desolation, and just one more time here. It says, verse 14 and 15.
But when you see the abomination of desolation standing where it should not be, let the reader understand, then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains. The one who is on the housetop must not go down or go in to get anything out of his house.
Okay. Flee to the mountains. Don't take anything out of this house. Verse 15. Let's go to Luke 21:21.
Then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains, and those who are in the midst of the city must leave, and those who are in the country must not enter the city.
Is this the same words?
It sounds the same.
Sounds the same. So we should anticipate the previous the same, right?
Yeah.
But what does it say in Luke 21:20?
But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then recognize that her desolation is near.
Wow.
So in Mark, abomination, desolation, spoken by Daniel. In Luke, it means it's Jerusalem surrounded by armies.
They are the abomination that will cause the desolation.
Exactly. Why abomination, desolation? What happens? They destroy the temple and they turn this temple area into a dump heap. And people for centuries throw dead animals in there. And when Arabs come, they build they build cemetery around the eastern perimeter of the Temple Mount.
And the holy hill and
That's
desecration.
why it's abomination, desolation. And it was done specifically. I mean, Arab Muslims were smart. They knew what Jews believed, and they just didn't want Jews to rebuild the temple. So they put all kinds of graves in there. So that's why Jews today believe that Messiah, in order to rebuild the temple, those who believe in the rebuilding of the temple, and sometimes, I have to, explain it to Christians, because Christians go to Jerusalem and they see, because, we know there's in evangelical world, there is such a huge obsession about the rebuilding of the temple.
Sadly.
And they go to Jerusalem and they see museum of the temple where they try to recreate the garments of the high priest and other things, even try to breed the red heifer. And I don't know how successful it is. But to the Christians who are obsessed with the rebuilding of the temple for absolutely no reason, they take this news and they're just run with this. It's going to be tomorrow. They see the war in Gaza and they see this is going to happen. It's ridiculous, because the point is Jews do not believe like Christians believe. Jews know that in order to cleanse this Temple Mountain from abomination and desecration by the dead bodies, the Messiah only can do it. They don't know how to do it. So they wait for the Messiah to come, and the Messiah will rebuild the temple.
Very important.
And of course, we know what happens. So in this case, if Christians concur with Judaism about the rebuilding of the temple, they basically deny the first coming of Jesus.
Pastor, this has been an amazing time understanding the comparisons between Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. And it's incredible to see this context. And thank you so much, guys, for joining us in studying Mark chapter 13. Please stay tuned for next lesson. And please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.